You know, we often talk about moments in history that change everything. But what happens when an entire era gets completely upended, not over decades, but in a single, absolutely chaotic week?
Well, that's exactly what happened in March of 2026. A line was crossed. Something fundamental just broke. And look, this wasn't just another flashy product launch. No. This was a massive technological shift that completely rewrote the rules for AI, for national security, and yeah, for the entire global economy.
For the longest time, we've gotten used to AI as this thing that, generates text or makes cool pictures, but everything that happened in this 1 week boiled down to one single, incredibly important question. What happens when AI breaks out of the chat window? When it stops just talking and actually starts doing?
So let's dive in. Section 1, a new era for AI. This is all about what people are calling the agentic shift. The first big shockwave was all about the tech itself. We saw AI leap from just predicting the next word in a sentence to these complex systems that could reason, plan, and, most importantly, act on their own in the real world.
And this right here is the absolute game changer, agentic AI. We're talking about AI systems that can actually think through complicated, multi-step problems and then go execute the solution, all without a human holding their hand. This is the jump from AI being a passive tool, like a hammer, to being an active agent, like a carpenter.
And in that 1 week, it was like a floodgate opened. Every major lab put their cards on the table. OpenAI dropped GPT 5.4, which could literally control a computer using a mouse and keyboard just like you or me. Google's Gemini 3.1 Pro was built to tackle incredibly complex scientific problems. And then you had xAI's Grok 4.20 taking a totally different approach, using teams of specialized AI agents that could work together on big research tasks.
All of this led to a truly watershed moment. On a really important test for just navigating a computer's operating system, GPT 5.4 hit a 75% success rate. Now, why does that matter? Because for the very first time, an AI officially blew past the human baseline of 72.4%. Let that sink in. The AI could now use a computer better than the average person.
Section 2, the code that thinks. We're talking biological intelligence here. Because this new agentic AI wasn't content to just stay inside a computer. In that very same week, it started to understand and interact with the code of life itself.
So, meet Evo 2. This thing isn't a language model. It's a DNA model. It was trained on almost 9 trillion base pairs from, well, pretty much all of life on Earth. And what it can do is just staggering. It designed brand new functional viruses from scratch to kill superbugs. It can predict your risk for genetic diseases with terrifying accuracy. And just to show off, researchers even used it to write messages in Morse code by rearranging the very structure of mouse stem cells. It is literally writing in the language of life.
But with that kind of incredible power comes a serious, and I mean serious, downside. This amazing promise has an immediate and frankly terrifying shadow. The exact same power that could cure our worst diseases could also be used to create unimaginable threats.
And believe me, this isn't some sci-fi plot. On March 11th, the official Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, these are the world's chemical weapons watchdogs, they issued a chilling report. They concluded that these new AI tools, and I'm quoting here, fundamentally lower the barriers to entry for designing and weaponizing harmful chemicals. The danger was now just as real as the promise.
Which brings us to Section 3, Promise, Peril, and Power, and the geopolitical collision. Okay, so when you take this level of agentic AI and you combine it with this dual-use biological potential, a collision with the most powerful institutions on the planet, we're talking governments and militaries, it wasn't just likely, it was inevitable.
And the flashpoint was a project called Golden Dome. It's a massive missile defense system meant to stop hypersonic weapons. Here's the problem. When a hypersonic missile is screaming towards you, a human operator has exactly 90 seconds to detect it, track it, and shoot it down. 90 seconds. That is a flat-out impossible timeline for a person. So for the military, the answer was obvious. AI has to be in control.
And this set up the central conflict of the week. The Pentagon came to the AI labs and said, "We need your models for all lawful uses." But one company, Anthropic, drew a hard line in the sand. They said absolutely not. No using our AI for fully autonomous killer drones, and no using it for mass surveillance of citizens. A fundamental clash of values was about to explode.
And things just escalated with breathtaking speed.
On March 7th, the Pentagon hits back, blacklisting Anthropic as a supply chain risk. 2 days later, Anthropic fires back with a federal lawsuit. And then, just hours after that lawsuit was filed, OpenAI swoops in, signs a deal to give its models to the Pentagon, and immediately triggers a massive crisis inside its own walls.
The head of robotics at OpenAI, a woman named Caitlin Kolonowski, resigned on the spot, and her statement really captured the gravity of the whole situation. She said surveillance of Americans without judicial oversight and lethal autonomy without human authorization are lines that deserved more deliberation than they got. You had a top expert, someone who really understands the stuff, basically sounding the loudest possible alarm.
So, on to Section 4, the battle for control. This was the fight between federal and state power. Because this fight wasn't just happening between tech labs and the military. At the exact same time, another battle was erupting between the federal government and individual states over who actually gets to write the rules for AI.
The federal government came out with this really aggressive 3-step playbook to basically crush any state-level AI rules. Step 1, issue a big executive order calling for a single, minimally burdensome national policy. Step 2, get the Commerce Department to write a report calling state consumer protection laws in places like Colorado and Texas onerous. And then, step 3, they brought out the hammer. They threatened to withhold a state's share of billions of dollars in federal broadband funding unless they got rid of their own AI safety laws.
And this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, Section 5, the Great AI Washing. This is the battle between narrative and reality. It's about how the story of AI became this incredibly powerful tool and maybe a convenient excuse in the corporate world.
So on March 13th, Jack Dorsey's company, Block, laid off 4,000 people. And the reason he gave was AI. He wrote this memo saying intelligence tools have changed what it means to build a company, and that a significantly smaller team can do more and do it better. The narrative was crystal clear. AI is here, and it's making human workers obsolete.
It was a powerful story, for sure. The company's stock actually soared on the news. But was AI really the reason they cut 40% of their entire workforce?
Well, the numbers tell a very different story. If you look back in 2019, Block had less than 4,000 employees. By the end of 2023, that number had exploded to almost 13,000. So the layoffs, they weren't really about AI replacing jobs. They were a course correction from massive overhiring during the tech boom. Analysts even have a name for this now, AI washing, using AI as a handy excuse to clean up your own past business mistakes.
And the irony is just wild. In that very same week, a real-world study from Anthropic, the company fighting the Pentagon, found the complete opposite was true. Their data showed that AI was mostly augmenting knowledge workers, making them better and more efficient at their jobs, not replacing them outright. The story and the reality were miles apart.
So after all that, what do we take away from this one wild week in March 2026? It's that AI has finally crossed a threshold. It is no longer just another app on your phone. When a piece of technology starts dictating military strategy, shaping constitutional law, and driving labor economics, it's become something much, much bigger. It's become sovereign infrastructure.
And that really leaves us with the only question that matters going forward. We've seen a glimpse of what this technology is capable of. So the debate can't be about what AI can do anymore. The real debate, the one we have to have now, is about who gets to decide. Who decides how it's used? What lines can never be crossed? And ultimately, who is really in control?